We often think of high intelligence as a collection of complex words and rapid-fire arguments. However, cognitive psychology suggests that true brilliance is more often defined by what stays unsaid. While many people feel the need to prove their status, the highly intelligent prioritize internal clarity. This is largely due to a phenomenon known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. Research shows that those with lower ability often overestimate their own competence and talk the most. In contrast, those with high IQs possess a deep sense of intellectual humility. They understand the vastness of what they don't know and choose their words with precision. By observing these verbal habits, we can identify the subtle markers of a high-functioning mind. Today, we are exploring 5 specific phrases that highly intelligent people rarely say out loud. 1. Highly intelligent people rarely use the phrase, "I already knew that." While it might feel satisfying to validate our own expertise, this phrase is a major conversational barrier. Psychology shows that this behavior often stems from a desire for social dominance or status. However, cognitive psychology warns against the expert trap, where we stop learning because we believe we are finished. When you dismiss information, you effectively close the door to new nuances or alternative perspectives. Brilliant minds prefer to stay in a state of beginner's mind to catch details others might overlook. By remaining silent, they allow the speaker to finish and often discover a new piece of the puzzle. The real-life consequence of saying, "I know," too often is intellectual stagnation and social alienation. Intelligent individuals would rather be perceived as curious than as all-knowing experts who have stopped growing. 2. This leads into the second behavior, the avoidance of interrupting others to show off intelligence. Highly intelligent people practice what cognitive psychology calls intellectual hospitality. They treat every conversation as a data-gathering mission rather than a competitive arena. Research suggests that those who dominate discussion often miss critical environmental cues. By actively listening, an intelligent person allows others to reveal their logic and potential biases. This creates a massive strategic advantage in negotiation and problem-solving. If you are the one speaking, you are only repeating what you already know. But if you are listening, you have the opportunity to acquire information for free. The consequence of failing to do this is a narrowed worldview and a reputation for arrogance. 3. Highly intelligent people almost never use the phrase, "It's not my fault." Psychology shows that these individuals typically operate with a strong internal locus of control. This means they believe they are responsible for the outcomes in their lives. When a mistake happens, they focus on their own contribution rather than external circumstances. Deflecting blame is often a defense mechanism used to protect a fragile ego. But the highly intelligent realize that blaming others strips them of their power to change. If it is someone else's fault, you are essentially a victim of their choices. By taking radical accountability, they maintain the agency required to solve the problem. The real-life consequence of this habit is a faster rate of learning and professional growth. 4. Closely tied to accountability is the refusal to engage in blame shifting. Psychology shows that making excuses creates a state of cognitive dissonance. This happens when our actions don't align with our desired self-image as a competent person. To resolve this discomfort, many people invent external reasons for their failures. Highly intelligent individuals realize that this energy is better spent on forensic analysis. They view every mistake as a data point that reveals a flaw in their current system. Defending the ego is a short-term comfort that leads to long-term incompetence. Instead, they admit fault quickly to move straight into the correction phase. This efficiency is why research suggests that high IQ correlates with high resilience in the workplace. 5. Truly brilliant individuals almost never announce their intelligence or declare they are the smartest person in the room. Psychology shows that overt displays of intellectual superiority are usually a compensation for deep-seated insecurity. In cognitive psychology, this is linked to a lack of social self-awareness and poor impulse control. The highly intelligent prefer a strategy often called stealth wealth regarding their mental capabilities. They allow their results, problem-solving abilities, and quality of work to speak for them instead. Proclaiming your own genius immediately triggers a defensive psychological response in those around you. It alienates potential allies and creates a social environment where others hope for your failure. By staying humble, the intelligent man or woman retains the element of surprise and reduces social friction. The consequence of this restraint is a more effective network and the ability to influence others without resistance. The bridge between raw cognitive power and real-world success is often found in social intelligence. Research suggests that individuals with high IQs who lack emotional intelligence often struggle in team settings. When someone constantly highlights their own brilliance, they inadvertently trigger a social threat response in others. Cognitive psychology calls this the status threat, which shuts down the collaborative flow of a group. Truly intelligent people understand that their goals are reached faster through the cooperation of others. They use their mental capacity to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics rather than to dominate them. By valuing the contributions of the group, they ensure that every brain in the room is working toward the solution. The consequence of ignoring these dynamics is an intellectual silo, where great ideas go unsupported. Mastering the silence of the ego allows the intelligence of the collective to thrive. 4. Highly intelligent people rarely justify a process by saying, "This is how it's always been done." Psychology shows that relying on tradition is often a cognitive shortcut to avoid the effort of critical thinking. Cognitive psychology calls this the status quo bias, where we prefer things to stay the same regardless of efficiency. Brilliant minds possess high levels of cognitive flexibility, allowing them to adapt to new information rapidly. They recognize that what worked yesterday might be a liability in a changing environment. Instead of following a script, they constantly evaluate the logic behind every action and rule. To avoid the trap of tradition, highly intelligent people utilize a mental framework called first principles thinking. Psychology shows that most people think by analogy, which means they copy what others are doing. However, high-functioning minds deconstruct a problem down to its fundamental, undeniable truths. They strip away the assumptions, social proof, and best practices that clutter average decision-making. This allows them to build a solution from the ground up rather than iterating on a flawed model. Cognitive psychology suggests this reduces the sunk cost fallacy, where we stick to bad ideas just because we started them. When you focus on core truths, you are no longer limited by what the majority thinks is possible. The real-life consequence is a unique ability to find breakthroughs in fields where others have hit a wall. 5. The final phrase that highly intelligent people rarely utter is the definitive claim, "That's impossible." While most people use this as a final verdict, the brilliant view it as a placeholder for missing information. Psychology shows that labeling a task as impossible is often a cognitive defense against the fear of failure. Research suggests that high intelligence is linked to a much higher tolerance for ambiguity and complexity. Instead of dismissive cynicism, they identify the specific technical constraints that make a goal currently difficult. They replace emotional rejection with a rigorous assessment of what variables need to change for success. Cognitive psychology. 5. The final phrase highly intelligent people rarely utter is the definitive claim, "That's impossible." While many use this as a final verdict, the brilliant view it as a placeholder for missing data. Psychology shows that labeling a task impossible is often a cognitive defense against the fear of failure. Research suggests that high intelligence is linked to a much higher tolerance for ambiguity in complex problems. Instead of cynical dismissal, they identify the specific technical constraints that currently make a goal difficult. They replace emotional rejection with a rigorous assessment of what variables must change for a successful outcome. Cognitive psychology identifies this as a possibility-oriented mindset which fuels persistent and truly disruptive innovation. The refusal to label things as impossible stems from a deep understanding of neuroplasticity. Research suggests that the brain remains capable of reorganization and learning throughout our entire lives. Highly intelligent people embrace what cognitive psychology calls a growth mindset. They discard language that implies fixed traits or permanent intellectual ceilings. When they encounter a lack of skill, They view it as a temporary state of not knowing yet. Psychology shows that those who believe their intelligence is malleable are more likely to take on challenges. They understand that intellectual capacity is not a static reservoir, but a muscle that strengthens with use.